Homeschooled kids of Reddit, what challenges did you face once you were in the real world? Remember that awkward part of your life when you experienced your first crush and you kind of made an idiot out of yourself because you weren't sure how to act around them? That's okay. You were a teenager. Everyone has awkward moments during their teens. Okay, now imagine going through that same experience, but when you're 21 and supposedly old enough to know better. I'm 28 now. I've dated a couple guys. I've liked a couple other people. While I still feel awkward around people I like, it is nowhere close to how I acted at 21. That entire semester was embarrassing. I still cringe at certain things I did. Everyone in my group of friends knew I liked this guy. The guy knew I liked him. It was really super obvious. I confessed to him on the last day of the semester because I was moving across town and I'd be going to a different community college. I figured that if he liked me back, we'd figure something out. If he didn't, I'd never have to see him again. Since he only liked me as a friend, I think this was a good decision on my part. 16. I'm a junior, but I'm enrolled in a community college full-time now, but I was homeschooled up until this fall. One big thing is that people swear a lot. Like, a ton for some people. We are of course never allowed to do that at home, and I guess I thought only people on the internet did it. Ada and random people are a lot friendlier than I thought they'd be, in general. My mother isolated us and had an emotionally incestuous / codependent relationship with me. I knew really well how to act to the outside world of adults that we'd encounter at church, etc., but didn't have any friends my own age from 12-22. My mother thought friends were unnecessary and ultimately a bad influence on children. I went to college at 22, and my biggest learning curve was how to interact in a casual way, and I actually found that because I at first didn't know how to read social cues and come off as borderline autistic. The biggest real challenge has been personally overcoming my abuse, which presents similar to others who were isolated and/or had controlling parents. I have a lot of anxiety and depression. College was great, but I feel like I lost many years to my mother, which resulted in overcompensation, binge drinking, depression, etc. I'm finally getting on an even keel now in my late 20s. Pros. I'll learn to be able to socialize with any age group, not just those my age. I was able to pursue a lot of hobbies that I believe made me well-rounded. Music, gardening, and acting especially helped me later. And there wasn't anybody to bully me about what I liked. Or, if there were, I could easily avoid them. I was able to dually enroll in my local community college at 14, earning my associate's degree very shortly after I got my diploma. This allowed me to transfer easily to a better 4-year school with less debt than I would otherwise had. Cons. Your parents control your materials. If there were topics they didn't want covered, e.g. evolution, you didn't cover them. I'm dubious about the legitimacy of my diploma. I don't know if my parents filled all the right paperwork. It's moot, since I have degrees, but it's a doubt I have. I could never really participate in athletics. Not because I didn't want to, or because there were no opportunities for homeschoolers to do so, but because my mom didn't see it as important, so she withdrew me from them when it inconvenienced her schedule. Oddly enough, acting didn't seem to interfere. I didn't really have much of a chance to learn how to socialize romantically, so I was behind the 8 ball there. I'm a bit better positioned now, but it took me a while to get my footing. I was socially isolated and extremely far behind on my education. Didn't learn how to multiply and divide until 7th grade. This was all due to my mom being a control freak and general manipulator. Thankfully my parents divorced and my dad put me and my little brother in public school. I didn't know how to act around kids my age, so I was super weird and didn't realize my actions would have repercussions. I was a real dick because of this, and once I realized that no one liked me because of this, I became extremely shut in and antisocial. I did my best to clean slate my personality and tried to start from zero so that I could act like everyone else around me. It was extremely hard to learn this, but over the years I've gotten better. I caught up with my education and I've made friends along the way, but I'm still hit by a lot of social anxiety and general lack of confidence. I wasn't homeschooled, but my room at my junior year of college was. Her parents didn't believe in sex education and had sheltered her greatly up until this point. She had just transferred from a community college where she lived at home. She somehow made it to age 22 without having any idea of what sex was, and I ended up having to give her the birds and the bees talk her second week in the dorms. Not something I ever imagined I'd have to do for a roommate, and something that would never have happened had she gone to a traditional school. I was and still am shocked by the amount of people who see you like you came from a different world. I don't hide that I was homeschooled because my mom did a great job. It made me love learning and try my hardest. But people learn you didn't go to public school, and a lot of them will flip a switch. I've had a teacher assume I had a social disability. A guy I had dated for months act almost offended by it and tell me he assumed homeschoolers didn't know what sex was and were all super religious. Because he met one guy like that. One college professor refused to believe my paper's point that was pro-homeschooling. It was like having to argue for my right to be raised the way I was, rather than about what I did right or wrong on my paper. It felt very isolating. When I was young, a very close friend even casually said, "Well, I do twice as much work as you do because you're homeschooled." She changed her mind pretty quick, but I was very angry and hurt that she would assume that at the time. These were all people who just saw me as normal until I told them. I can't speak for everyone else, and I'm so sorry for anyone whose parents have used it to shelter and abuse them. But whatever tools these parents use to abuse and hide things from their children is still just that, a tool they used because it gave them an advantage. I learned how to be social around all kinds of groups, was encouraged to explore new things, and grew up to have a love for learning new subjects. I was also taught that different ways of learning work for different people, and homeschooling is just one of them. So my biggest real world surprise is that so many people can't accept it, and they see you as just like them until you bring it up. Then suddenly their opinion of you changes so drastically. I have also known the religious control thing to be true in some circumstances, but ironically my mom wanted to teach us about every religion and never pushed biblical stuff on us. So I was surprised to learn so many people expected you to know Christian religion and the people in the biblical stories all back to front. I just kind of find it weird. To be fair though, I've never been good at picking up signals from guys because I grew up around them. My mom admits she was never able to tell the difference between when a guy is interested in you or just wants to stay friends. A kid once gave me a singing bear and a locket with his face on it for Valentine's Day, and I still thought he was just being nice. You could argue that is from the homeschooling, but personally I think I'm just naturally clueless. None, really. A lot of people I know who went to public or private school had trouble after high school because they were used to having a totally structured environment where they had rules to follow and success was clearly defined. Study hard, earn good grades, achieve success and recognition. Me, I had no grades and very little structure, so by the time I got to college, I was already used to having to sort of blaze my own trail. I didn't need to rely on anyone to motivate me or tell me what to do. Tests and grades were a bit of a struggle, especially at first, because there's definitely a method of studying for a test that I didn't learn as a homeschooler. But once you're out of school, that knowledge all becomes pointless. And if I had a nickel for every person who asked me if I had any friends or must have awful social skills, I could now buy a small country. My social skills are fine, but thanks for your concern. Not me, but my brothers who are 20 and 17. My mom took them out of school when they started getting in trouble for not making it most days. They went to every elementary school until my mom found a private school that didn't really care how often the boys made it, as long as the tuition was paid. They somehow passed through elementary and into the private middle school next door. For high school my stepdad got tired of paying for these private schools, and so my older brother went to the public high school. For one day, the reason he had to drop out and do internet schoolies because someone offered him drugs. I asked for specifics, but there were none. 5 years later, my older brother got his diploma, and no word on the younger brother. These two, at 20 and 17, still share the same tiny bedroom with the same twin beds they've had since they graduated to big boy beds. My older brother got a job where my stepdad works, and I'm always appalled to see a stack of fucking paper checks on the counter. Current tally is over $10k. He hasn't gotten around to getting a bank account. Mom says that he's saving to buy a house. Younger brother spends his days texting with his girlfriend who he met through commenting on a mutual friend's post. She lives in across the country from him, and they have a kip/la fawn thing going on. They've been together for 2 years and she's perpetually coming to visit any day now. I don't know about you guys, but I cannot imagine spending the years of 14 to 20 in a room with another boy. I literally had a towel that doubled as a nightstand through those years. Also, their house has an entire unfinished basement that could turn the house from a 2-bedroom to 3 to 4 easily, but despite owning the home for 25 years and refinancing to make these changes several times, it never happens. I seem to have lost focus here, but what I'm saying is that I don't think homeschool is always necessarily bad if your parents aren't lazy and actually care about your future. My only concerns would be making sure that there are social interactions so that kids can learn the real adult skill of operating with a wide variety of personalities. My brothers, and mom for that matter, rarely leave the house. Myself and my siblings have all been homeschooled because my oldest sister's first grade teacher was a moron. My parents said screw that, we can do better. They both have advanced degrees. I was part of a homeschool co-op, so had many friends through that. So socially, I don't think being homeschooled had much of an effect. My siblings are split between introverted and extroverted, so our social education was far from lacking. Homeschooling was a largely self-driven method of learning, so when I got to college and then my first job, I had no problem setting my own schedule and managing my workload, as well as pursuing what I wanted with abandon. I have practically nothing but good things to say about homeschooling if, like all schooling, it is done properly and with the child's best interests at heart. It's definitely not for every child or parent, but I hope to homeschool someday myself. My experience is closer to unschooling than homeschooling, since my parents never had a set curriculum for me. The flexibility always worked really well for my learning style, though this isn't true for everyone. My brother was homeschooled until he was about 8 years old, and didn't learn to read until he started public school. I never set foot in a public school, but when I was 12 I started at an alternative/private/democratic free school. K-12, no grades, no required classes, never more than 60 students. After graduating from there, no official diploma of course, but it was a rigorous graduation process. I got my GED and took the ACT in preparation for college, scored average or above average in most subjects. I got an internship at a behavioral neuroscience lab, volunteered there after the internship ended. They eventually hired me, and I've been here for about 2 years now as an employee. I applied for and got rejected from 2 colleges, one of them on the account that the average of my GED scores was 2 points too low. They both invited me to reapply when I have earned some credits at another institution, since I have no official diploma or transcript that they can go off of. I'm 20 now, and in my 3rd term of community college. Half of the stuff I could do in my sleep, half of it is totally new to me. So while there are definitely a lot of extra hoops that you have to jump through if you take the alternative schooling route, in my experience there are far more benefits. There are some weird trade-offs. The week I was rejected from the 2nd college I applied to was the same week that I became a co-author on a published research paper.